Hi, and welcome back to my channel, My Tax Guy. We discuss all things tax, and we're going to get you guys ready for the up and coming 2023 filing tax season. Now, I want to thank everyone who's been liking and subscribing to my channel. I want to make it to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and with your help, that'll be possible. Just go on ahead, hit that like button down below, and feel free to share my videos on all your social media with your friends if they have any questions and things like that. Also, you can also feel free to email me at mytaxguy22@gmail.com with any questions you may have, and we can have a more in-depth discussion on whatever things you have questions about, whether we're going to talk about credits, anything that's being proposed for the up and coming tax year as far as congressional rulings and things like that. So I am always open to take those questions and give everyone a helping hand with understanding how this tax business works. Now today, I want to discuss something that everyone should be also looking at getting ready for this up and coming tax season, and it's basically how to pick a preparer. Now your needs are going to vary, and because they're going to vary, they may be very simple things that you might be able to handle yourself, the things you will actually need an expert for. We'll also be discussing today a little bit about what you should be looking for when you walk into a tax office for the first time. Because believe it or not, there are things a preparation office should have, to be on the up and up and give the presentation that not only are they a legitimate business, but they really care about their clients when they're walking in. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that credentials are important, but they're not the only thing you should be looking for. Part of the reason for that is, again, the business as of itself is not necessarily one that requires a bunch of preparation credentials. But again, when it comes to your tax needs, you will want someone more experienced to be handling the more complicated matters, especially if you have to deal with things like credit default swaps, any sort of exotic investment plans. If you're a person that's like an investor in things like real estate, and heck, I'm gonna be honest with you, even if you have to deal with horse racing and farming, those tax returns are typically not the easiest ones to get through. And so you may want to get a higher level tax preparer, like a CPA or even an EA, and just to handle those matters and be able to go over those things with you. Now, there are differences in those initials. I'm going to go over those really quickly. Now, CPA stands for Certified Public Accountant. Those are accountants who are basically registered to the Department of Education for whichever state they're allowed to be practicing in. They have unlimited representation rights. That means if anything happens and you need to hire them for anything beyond just preparing your taxes, you can actually do it. And they have unlimited rights. You won't have to worry about, oh my God, do I need to find someone? They can go to state, they can represent you in arbitration with like tax departments and things like that. So a CPA is basically an all-around kind of person where they're pretty much unlimited taxes. Now for a CPA, the thing that separates it from the others is that a CPA also has certain business aspects they're allowed to do. So like when it comes to forming firms, having CPA in the title of a business and things like that, the CPA has to be registered to the business. So yes, if you see CPAs in someone's business name, there has to be a CPA there. And you can always, of course, ask to see the credentials for that. Yes, it's a certificate, just like you have to do when you file for like your sales tax licensing, or if you go to a department store and you're looking for like the things for the fire codes and stuff like that. Those things have to be posted for you to see. Usually if I go into like just a small local store, the owners will usually have like the tobacco license, the sales tax license, things like that already posted on the wall, just in case someone from the comptroller's office walks in. That's going to be what they're looking for. So they're not going to be like, oh my God, you don't have your certificates and where are they? They're not going to ask to see them. They should already be posted. And that's the same thing with a CPA licensed office. When you walk in there, it's not something that you just say, hey, pull out your accounting degrees and stuff like that. No, that's a whole different ball of wax if that's what you're asking for. But that license needs to be front and center, especially if it's in the business title. Whether or not the CPA is actually going to be there that day, whole different matter. But that license needs to be posted just like any other licensing that gives them the right to operate their business under that name. That's a very big distinction for CPAs, and I would honestly say LLMs as well. Those titles are given out because they're literally being certified, and they have certain requirements they have to meet for education, things like that. So that those things really need to be prevalent where you can see them. You should not have to search them out at all. And the main reason I say that is because, a long time ago, people would literally just put those letters up on their business, and there would be no CPA. Not only would there be no CPA inside of the office, there's just no CPA in the business at all. So that's another thing. So you have CPA in the title, there needs to be a CPA involved in the business. It can't just be CPA and no CPA. Another thing that I'll talk to you briefly about is an LLM. Now, an LLM is a lawyer, but they're specialty lawyers. They have different classes that handle different things. But the LLM I'm going to talk to you about is the one pertaining to tax. They too have unlimited representation rights, but they are lawyers. So they have to take the bar, they have to pass it, of course, they have to practice. They also have unlimited representation rights up until the Supreme Court. So those are things that you have, like, they're regular lawyers. They're not necessarily tax experts per se, but they are pretty knowledgeable in the tax area. They basically live for tax law. So if they got tax law, trust me, they can handle a tax return and taxes as far as like knowing what should be there and what shouldn't be. As far as having them prepare it, I would probably say if I had to pick between the CPA and the LLM to prepare the taxes, I'm probably going to go with the CPA. They'll have actual more hands-on experience actually touching a tax return. So it'll be better for them, better for you actually, if you go to a CPA to handle LLM. But an LLM is great, especially again, if you're having audit issues, if you have to appeal decisions and things like that. They can handle it just as well as a CPA. In some cases, I've seen they can actually handle a little bit better because they're used to being in court. So moving through procedural things, as far as the court is concerned, they're a little bit better at. So I would say an LLM is for that. Next up is the enrolled agent. Now, the enrolled agent is a certification given out by the IRS. That makes that person eligible to have the same unlimited preparation rights, unlimited representation as well. So they're like a CPA, but not quite, because they don't have any diverse experience outside of tax. And that's what separates the EA from the CPA and the LLM. There is nothing outside of tax for them. Unless they have other certifications, you could be an insurance broker. They could be somebody that's like an actuarial expert. Like, they can have different things. But in EA, essentially, they live tax law. Their entire representation is for tax law and things like that. They also have unlimited representation rights when it comes to tax court. So they can go anywhere from like the office to phone calls to speaking to revenue agents to going to the U.S. tax courts and representing you. They have unlimited rights in those areas. They also have rights as far as like representing you to like the states, depending on what state you're in. So they're pretty much, as far as representation goes, they're equal to those other two positions. It's just that within EA, their sole focus is only on tax, whereas a CPA, there's a lot of other things that they would be handling. Same thing for the LLM, so they don't necessarily have to be bogged down with just tax. So the EA is literally tax, and specifically federal tax, because that's where the certification comes from. So they are great. They're actually really good at preparing taxes. Depending on who your EA is, they may be experts in some of those things I talked to you about, especially when it comes to expatriates. I have a couple of clients that are expatriates, And when I had difficulty with one, with as far as like regarding their housing situation, I actually contacted one of my friends who's in the EA, and they actually helped us like get the domicile issue worked out. And it's really important that you have somebody that has that expertise and that knowledge, because if you're having a more complicated issue, that's where those titles become really important. The CPA, the LLM, and the EA are really for when you have matters that are complicated beyond the regular scope of just giving in your 1099s, W-2s, and walking away and say, hey, here's my stuff, just get my taxes done, and that's great. After your taxes gets done, when you run into issues, if you get an examination, if the examination goes from something where it's just documentation and now you need actual representation, you can those kind of titles will handle that for you. Now, we'll also tell you that representation is not the same as getting your taxes done. I know some people believe that it is up to the preparer to be looking for all the issues that there could be, but be honest with you, the IRS and the states, they pull stuff at random. There is not always a method to the madness, but I will say, of course, Schedule C's get pulled more often than not because you're Schedule C and you're a business, and business returns are audited. It's just part of doing business in this country. You just have to understand, if you put down, I have a profit and loss statement, the government says you are obligated to give me knowledge about how you're conducting your business. And just one of the truths of making money in America. So, while all of those things being equal, they're pretty good. Unlimited representation around, differences in what they can do and what they can't do. Now we're going to go to an IRS registered preparer. Now, before, they used to have tests for tax preparers. Not necessarily ones that work for the IRS, but all preparers. And all those preparers had to basically be certified in order to prepare taxes. But that went away, I think it was like 88, 89. I have to go back and double check the year. But basically the test went away. And tax preparation became pretty much a thing where, that they didn't necessarily have to be registered in order to prepare taxes with the IRS or the state. It didn't matter. It's kind of carte blanche out there. Still kind of is. Now, after a couple of years, what they came up with is something called the AFSP, the Annual Filing Season Program. That program allows a preparer to basically go through, say, 18 to 20 hours of coursework where they would just go through some self-guided lessons. They would take ethics, different kinds of taxes, business, there's college, savings, there's the QBI deductions, just different kind of courses. And what they would do afterwards, they would take a nice final exam, a big hardy one, takes about 2.5 hours to take that test. And what they would do is become something called an Annual Filing Season Program Tax Preparer, or an IRS Registered Tax Preparer. Once you're an IRS Registered Tax Preparer, you basically go on the IRS website, and what the IRS does is also place you into Google searches. So if you need someone that's pretty knowledgeable about taxes, or should be knowledgeable about taxes, you can simply Google IRS Registered Preparer nearest me, and you'll get names. Because what the IRS wants people to know is we take the preparation business very seriously, and we want as many people out there as possible to at least go out for this kind of certification so that people feel comfortable picking them. Now, the one thing with the AFSP preparer, or the IRS Registered Preparer, is they do not have unlimited representation rights. What they have is limited, and they're limited up to the revenue agent. So they basically can go as far as maybe an office visit, and that's as far as it goes. If you need something that requires legal documentation, filing cases, power of attorney, things like that, then I would say to you will need to get a CPA or an EA or an LLM on board to help you get through that matter. Now, a lot of things that the IRS registered preparer can do, especially when it comes to that, it can really help you as far as like getting things together, getting the facts, getting information. And these are all things that falls within their scope to do. So it's really good if you have your taxes prepared by one. They are typically, including myself, typically pretty knowledgeable about taxes. I, of course, like I just said, I am also a IRS registered preparer. So I do the course every year. I've already done it for the upcoming 2023 filing season. So I'm ready to go. And I'm also still working on my CPA exam. So I can give my clients as much help as possible. Now, I'm going exhaustively through all of these things that you should be looking for as far as credentials. Now, let's talk about the tax office. There are some things that you need to be on the lookout for when you go into your tax office. It's not just a matter of whether or not your tax preparer likes you or cares about what's going on in your life. It's just a question of professionalism and things that legally they need to have up. Now, one of the things they need to have up is sort of like a pricing guideline. And it's basically a manual on how they price and what pretty much they're going to be doing for you that day as far as like how they prepare the taxes, what they're going to be responsible for and things like that. The reason why that needs to be up front and center in the office is because you don't need to guess, and more or less the state and the states and the IRS all agree that you don't need to be guessing about that. That needs to be front and center for you. And the offices that I've always worked in, I've always noticed is literally right by the entrance. It is up. It is very important that you have those things up and that you can look to your left or to your right or even straight to the back. You know where it is. It's in there. And the reason why it's in there is because the IRS wants to make sure that if anything happens, you have a way of communicating with that office. On that same poster with the fee schedule should be the phone number of the business and an alternate phone number just in case you come into a tax issue, because like I said, a lot of tax offices are closed really after May 1st. So you really are going to need that alternate number because there's a good chance you might not be able to reach through the main number, but you should always be able to reach the people who's on your taxes. And that's another thing. That second number is important. It's not enough to have the business number up by itself. In season, you can reach your preparer, your CPA, your EA, your LLM, your registered preparer. You can reach any of these people at any time. The issue, of course, then becomes when the season's over, what happens? Offices close down. Voice messaging systems and the like, they're pretty good, but they're not something that's a guarantee. So you need to make sure that you're looking for that second number. That needs to be posted, I would say, above all else. The other thing you should be looking for is a taxpayer bill of rights. You know, when you go to the hospital and you are being entered into the hospital, inside of the papers you're signing as you're going in and the papers that you're signing going out, there's a patient bill of rights. Well, your tax preparer office works the same way. You have a bill of rights. And basically in there, just information of what's to be expected of the business while they're preparing your taxes. Now, it's not exactly the same thing that's going to be on the board, but that's something that also needs to be in the front. Typically, tax offices that don't have that up, I won't say that they're like the worst things in the world, but if it was me and I'm looking, that would actually worry me a little bit because it's an every year thing. The Bill of Rights, the information that's really in it doesn't change, but it still needs to be there every year. So your Bill of Rights, it's basically 10, 11 rules of what's supposed to happen as you get your tax prepared, what the preparer is responsible for, and what you're responsible for as far as your taxes. That needs to be there. And it also has to be in other multiple languages. If you're preparing taxes for like a certain language group, I'll give you an example. We, where I'm at currently, we prepare a lot of tax returns for people who predominantly speak Spanish. So we have to have it not only in the English, we also have to have it in Spanish. So that's also something that you can also tell people to look out for is, hey, where are we doing business? How are we handling clients? Do you see this in more than one language? Because they may need an interpreter maybe to talk. There should be something there on paper to say, hey, this is what is supposed to be happening with your tax return. Again, that's something you have to look for when you're walking in. The last thing I would say as far as like picking an office is do your homework. There's a lot of craziness that happens. I saw one place did some firefighters taxes in North Carolina, and then all of a sudden the place is gone. The guys closed their shop, and all those firefighters owe like $50,000 to the IRS and to North Carolina. Between the two of them, I think each one of them had like $30,000, $40,000. So it's a lot of money to not be able to say, hey, what went on my tax return? And the person who was, of course, I've been here for years and years and years and years, is now packed up and gone. Being there for a long time doesn't make them moral. It doesn't make them right. It doesn't make them any less prone to making mistakes and things like that. But again, the tax return is 100% on you. Yes, you are 100% liable for what goes in that tax return. That's why these things are important that you need to look for when you're going into a tax office. One of the other things I would say as far as like when you're going inside of the office, just look for just basic disposition of people being there. Do they look like they really want to help you get through your tax return? They're just trying to look like they were trying to hurry up and get you in just to keep like churning people in and out. That feeling you get if you feel like you're just being come in and you're being churned out, trust that feeling. Okay, because this is a very important matter. And you want someone that's not only going to take their time with you, but is going to try to understand and make you feel comfortable with the process. Okay, and with that being said, I want to thank everyone for coming in today. Keep tuning in. I'm going to keep dropping this knowledge about this tax stuff. And I will go over some things that I've heard on TikTok next that have disturbed me to no end. And I just want to share with you guys like things you need to look out for when people are telling you to do them, as far as like your W-4, your withholdings, selling stuff like stocks, bonds, heck, even your cars and stuff. What is and what isn't allowable. That being said, that's the end of this one. I'll see you out there. Take care.